Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning, morning.
Morning.
How's everyone's second day going? Woo! Oh, I like it. Good energy. We have an exciting panel today. And I think what I wanted to start off with was really set the tone. And all of us were kind of joking and laughing backstage. But a lot of times, what we're seeing in the industry and the narrative in the industry is going towards something like L2s are fragmenting Ethereum. L2s are taking value and extracting from Ethereum. Is that really the truth, or is that just something that we're seeing being kind of put forth by other folks in the industry? So I wanted to get the takes of all our leaders here, and maybe to kind of go directly for the elephant in the room. From your perspectives and your discussions in the last week or so, Stephen, what do we need to do better as an ecosystem for Ethereum? And I'd love to get the takes from all the other founders here.
Yeah, I think that Ethereum's design, the way it is today, the layer 2, the layer design is actually, I would say, its superpower. If you look at the most successful protocol of all time, which is the internet, it's a layered architecture, and it's not by accident. And actually, if you go back to the 90s, there were people having the same debate we're having today, which is this a good idea, is this a bad idea? And it turns out it's a very good idea. And the reason is, let's go back to Ethereum. 2 years ago, almost to the day, we did the merge, and we moved Ethereum from proof of work to proof of stake. Today, there are over 100 layer 2s and layer 3s that are tracked by L2 on Ethereum. Imagine if we had to do the consensus change 100 times. But we don't, because we have a layered architecture where Ethereum sits on the bottom, and it can provide its consensus. And you know what changes Arbitrum had to make when the merge happened to adopt proof of stake? None. It just automatically inherited that. And that's one of the superpowers. And the other big one is innovation. There are 100 different layer 2s with 150 different strategies. And the idea is that you can have privacy L2s, degen L2s, the most buttoned up L2s for fintechs or traditional financial institutions, and they're all powered by Ethereum, and they can innovate there, and they don't have to develop their own consensus. They're all secured by Ethereum. But to your question, where can we be better is it does lead to the challenge of interoperability. And you have different layer 2s, and you have to figure out layer 3s, and you have to figure out how can they communicate and interop with each other. And the thing I think we can do better as a community is there's sometimes a hyper-focus on your own stack where we say, how can Arbitrum chains talk to each other better? Or how can Starknet chains, or how can Polygon or Scroll chains talk to each other better? And sometimes there are good technical reasons for that. But I think wherever we can, we should say, how can all Ethereum chains talk to each other talk with each other, and not limit ourselves to our own ecosystems if it's not technically necessary.
Thank you. And Ali, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so on whether L2s are parasitic or going to extract value from Ethereum or give it back, I think the honest answer is that we're way too early in the game, in the sense that right now a very small percentage of humanity is using blockchains for anything. And really the challenge of all of us is to give humanity the scale and also the use cases and the new vision in order for humanity to embrace this technology. Now, when all is said and done, value will pool and accrue somewhere. Maybe it will accrue in places that don't exist yet, and that's fine. What I said to my team in the early days when we founded Starkware, and I still say to them today, and I think it applies here as well, is I said to them, and I say to them now, I know that our technology is going to transform the world for the better. And I mean, not just the blockchains. We're famous for validity rollups and start proofs, which we invented and productized. So I have no doubt that this will embrace and permeate everywhere. I don't know whether value will accrue necessarily to us or to some competitor or elsewhere. I don't know that. But that's fine, because the most important thing is the most important scarce resource each of us has is our time. And the question is, are we spending it on things that we find valuable and contributing to progress? And I have no doubt that advancing L2s and Ethereum in a variety of ways is going to accrue a lot of value to humanity. And we will look back and say, I have not wasted my years in vain, and I have done something that I'm proud of. And that's all that matters. So I don't know where value will accrue, but I'm very content, progressing and advancing the technology we're building?
I would say, day before yesterday, I was saying that you should see it in a way that remove all the layer 2s from Ethereum. Assume they don't exist and only Ethereum exists. And what do you think the value of Ethereum would be? It's a pretty slow chain, 13 TPS and all that. And now you have a lot of L1s who are offering this execution engines, like execution environments. Most of the dApps and the activity would have moved out of Ethereum to some of these other L2s, some of the other L1s. And I say that the fact that because of L2s, all these developers are still in the Ethereum, constellation. I would say, now Ethereum is no longer a single, thing. It's a constellation, and all those developers have, have places like Starkware, Arbitrum, Polygon, Scroll, that they can launch these applications and achieve like mass adoption with that, right? Like billions and billions of dollars of TVL and all that. All this will not be available to Ethereum developers if this was only Ethereum and the gas fees is $50. There will be very few activity, and markets will already price in that, this is not going anywhere. The activity cannot exist here. So, they will, the way we saw in the past cycle also, the market started pricing that maybe some other L1s can take the place of Ethereum. If L2s were not there, there's 100% people will believe that, Ethereum is going to be phased out. So that's the answer by contradiction, that I think the L2s add huge value to Ethereum, I think. And without L2s, Ethereum won't exist the way we see it today.
Sandy, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think when I first heard of the L2-centric roadmap and the concept of infinite garden, the idea that you can apply your own thinking and the different technical variations and experimentation to how Ethereum scale was a super novel idea. I've never heard of anything quite like that before. And back then, multiple L1s were already fragmenting the on-chain experience and fragmenting liquidity and developers. So from Ethereum's from the base layer perspective, I think this is a pragmatic choice. And what it's led to is multiple years of experimentation and different varieties of technical flavors of how to scale Ethereum. And right now, I think the ecosystem as a whole is in a very healthy place with a lot of solid players, like everyone on a table, with their interpretation of how to scale Ethereum. And now, we have hundreds of different roll-ups, and there's a lot of people with different strategies about how to go to market, how to BD, how to bootstrap the ecosystem. And I think we've moved on to the next phase where the tech stack is somewhat in a good place. There's lots of solutions that are readily available and you can apply immediately. And then the variety of different business go-to-market and how to assess different audience, that becomes like an even wider spectrum of competitive landscape. And so I think, the way I see it, Ethereum is a leader in kind of proposing this concept, and we're seeing other chains trying to think of different names to also describe a similar setup, because fundamentally this is the only way to scale.
This is really helpful context, and I think it sounds like what many of you are saying is that without the L2s, Ethereum wouldn't be here the way it is today. It wouldn't be here with the size it is today. For example, if I were a developer trying to come in, or even just a retail user trying to come in, into the Ethereum ecosystem, I don't know much about Ethereum, but I see all these different L2s, right? And I have this experience that I have to go bridging, I have to do learn about these different chains. What do you think is a way for me as a new user into Ethereum to ease this experience? And do you guys have any thoughts on how you're addressing that right now? Steven or anyone else? Ellie's nodding a lot. Sandeep's nodding. Go ahead.
I can take that. At Polygon, we also believe that this fragmentation is an issue, and due to that, we are working on this solution called AgLayer, which is pretty L2 neutral, and we expect to integrate with most of the L2s so that you have one probably unified interface where the interoperability can be much easier, much more intuitive, and users don't have to go through that. And developers also have these libraries and all that. They can just simply abstract all of it away from the end users. So, I think and similarly, I think every ecosystem is thinking, L2 ecosystem is thinking of interoperability solution in one way or the other, or collaborating with each other to find these better UX paths for the users and the developers.
So on our side, and also continuing with what I said earlier, the real challenge is not addressing the existing crypto crowd, which is very important, but it's sort of already, it's gotten used to whatever the 24 key passphrases and all the complexity of it. It's really attracting folks like, my siblings and my dad who aren't crypto native today. So what we've been doing with this is on StarkNet, there's 100% native account abstraction, which then is used by wallets to give pure Web 2-like experience, using face recognition or biometrics on those wallets without the need for elaborate, passphrases and stuff like that, while giving you all the security of Web 3. So it's fully self-custodial, fully safe, but with a very Web 2 experience. And I think that, so I know that Ethereum is also, moving towards account abstraction models and others, and I think the way to go is to make everything more abstracted and seamless. The internet also is very complex, but by now the user experience is very good, and with more computation at your hand on the blockchain and better standards, you can have an experience that is common to other areas, and also you can have all the security of Web 3. I encourage you not to take my word at it. Try either Argent or Bravos, the wallets, and see, onboard to them, feel how it sees. You'll see that it's quite Web 2 experience.
Yeah, I would say that specific technology such as account abstraction is going to make this very important, very more accessible to users, and is very important. And also things like chain-specific addresses. Right today, users are jumping between chains, and they're sometimes losing funds because, oops, I sent it, I sent this on the wrong chain. The address isn't supported there, and these things can't happen. But I think if we zoom out, it's also because we're really early on. So, going back to the internet analogy and extending it a little more, when I got here this morning, I took my phone and ordered a taxi on Grab. And I didn't really think about the network stack underneath what I was doing, the TCP/IP stack. I just thought that I'm taking my phone and ordering a taxi. And I didn't think about the network stack. I didn't think whether the servers were being hosted on AWS. Really, all I thought about was the experience that I was having. And we're all here on chain. It's like, I think we're very early on, and we're like the builders of those core layers. But actually, our success among users, particularly as we go mainstream to users who don't really necessarily know or care about the fundamental intricacies of the blockchain, I think us fading a little bit into the background is actually going to be important, and something which I am actually hopeful that happens. The same way I order my taxi, I don't really think about the server stack underneath it. I also think that eventually we'll get to a point where a user just says, hey, I want to do this experience on the blockchain. They might not even know they're using the blockchain. They might be playing a game or doing some financial transaction in an app like Grab on their phone, and not realize that, hey, there's a whole blockchain stack underneath this that's making it possible. So today, we have hyper awareness of users, because you go into your wallet, you choose your network, and you self-custodying all your assets, and that's always going to be good for some users, but they also have to make experiences that, with technology like account abstraction, and also just with the general mindset, really abstracts this away from users, that they don't have to be thinking about, hey, what is the software that this taxi Grab app is running on?
I hear you, and it sounds like what many of you are referring to is kind of that we're kind of stuck in this bubble and really overthinking the kind of the pitting one ecosystem against another, when it's actually that we're really aiming towards to get mass adoption. And I understand, I know you guys for many years, and you all have been trying to do that, right? I'm very curious if you ever believe there will be a L2 that breaks itself from Ethereum and become its own independent chain, or ideologically or technically. Would you ever see that happening?
So there are 100 plus layer 2, layer 3s tracked today. So, can someone somewhere, build a layer 2 and then decide that, hey, we're going to separate from Ethereum? Of course, someone can do that, and I actually expect it to happen. It's not hard to spin up a layer 2 today, and you might have misaligned parties doing that. But I think if you look at the people here on stage today, and like the serious builders in the space that care about security, care about decentralization, that doesn't really make sense. It's like basically saying, hey, can you take this Grab taxi app and separate it from the internet? I mean, you can, but you won't get a taxi because you won't be able to communicate. And similarly, Arbitrum is only Arbitrum because it's only able to have its fast block times, its low fees, its a higher security assumption because it has Ethereum underneath it. If you took Ethereum out, you wouldn't have these features together with the security, and that's its superpower. So could someone do that? Sure. And will someone do that? Yes. I don't think you'll see this from any serious blockchain, and I certainly don't think you'll see this from anyone here on stage today.
Yeah, and I think this classification of L1 and L2 is also very non-nuanced classification. Actually, what it actually is that you have execution environments and settlement environment.
Sure.
And Ethereum is a settlement environment, and I don't, as Steven said, that any serious, execution environment building, on top of Ethereum or anywhere else, if you really want to achieve that high performance on execution environment, you would need some level of, you need to offload some of this decentralization and many other assumptions to a settlement layer, which is providing you decentralization and, safety and security and all that. And I think that's how it should be looked at, because a lot of layer 2 chains in future, I think most of the layer 2 chains will get decentralized, right? And they will start looking like something like you can call them layer 1s also, right? Like they have their own validators, own consensus, but they are also using Ethereum as a settlement layer. So I think that's how we should be seen. And in that context, almost all layer 2s will look like an L1 if, in that classification, but mostly all L2s are trying to build execution environments, and Ethereum will, my guess is that Ethereum will remain the primary settlement layer. Of course, there are improvements, but I think Starkware is also trying on the Bitcoin side, Bitcoin is adding more and more functionalities, which might make Bitcoin also, and I think that's the only credible settlement layer that can rival Ethereum in any form. And if Bitcoin opens up all of those functionalities over the time, then a lot of L2s would also think that, okay, maybe some of the L2s might want to settle to Ethereum. That might happen naturally. But generally, I think Ethereum is the most formidable settlement layer.
Any other comments?
I'd like to hear Sandy.
I think that question brings me back to a story that I haven't really shared in public about why we're called Scroll. It's seemingly a random name, but when we started this project, one of the core missions is to bring a user experience that is as smooth as scrolling on your phone. And the idea that everything about the chain, about the wallet should hopefully be completely abstracted, and you should just be seeing whatever you want to get from your mobile device. And there's obviously a lot of work to do before we get there, and our roadmap has never changed, and that's why we're super focused on the finality aspect, which is kind of something that a unique ZK property that we can get to a place where interoperability between various chains that clearly all have found product market fit somewhere, and everyone, all the L2 can work together as a holistic, body, and the end user doesn't need to deal with any of the choices. Right now, the UX of scrolling down and seeing 5 or 10 different chain options is mind-boggling, and you don't see that in any other kind of consumer-facing product. And one random fact that I was just thinking about as I was hearing all the speakers sharing is that I have a thesis that the active on-chain real users is actually dwindling in recent months, contrary to popular belief. I think just the experience has become so confusing that real users who are actively doing things on chain and moving about is shrinking a little bit. So.
What do you guys think that, just taking Ethereum base chain as a settlement layer, what does the base chain need to provide more of, if anything, ideologically or technically?
I'd like to answer that. I think it has to offer broadness, and also known as decentralization, and really strive for maximal broadness, because that's really the only unique thing that is new and different about blockchain. It is the base of trust. So decentralization and broadness is the utmost important thing, both on the layer 1s and the layer 2s. And so certainly Bitcoin does an amazing job at that. Ethereum does an amazing job at that. They're probably the two best broad networks. I would like to see even more broadness in addressing the questions of, right, whenever you have some decentralization, there are these economic incentives towards centralization. And I would like to see a lot of efforts on behalf of the various L1s and also L2s to address this. And I can share that, as CEO of Starkware, I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about things like governance, decentralization, pushing it forward. And in this context, one thing that, as Sandeep has already mentioned, that our strategic vision is also to make Starknet, a layer 2, but not just of one chain. Next thing is going to be Bitcoin, secure settlement onto Bitcoin as well as onto Ethereum, and then of course expanding to other places. So even the concept of like exactly an L2, I see Starknet as this integrity web that sort of allows you to interact and settle with different broad decentralized networks. So the most important thing, which frankly I'm not sure is addressed well enough, is the constant strive and discussion of decentralization and more of it, and how do you ensure that the powers are really, there's no central party or several central parties that could censor or shut things down, which I fear might be the case with any of those. So I would like to see more of that, and we're certainly committed to advancing that a lot, at least in our own corner of the universe.
So Vitalik has been pushing many of the L2s to kind of take off their training wheels and also start decentralizing as well. But what you're saying is that you wish the base chain to become more decentralized than it is now.
Yeah, because that's also very important. But
yep.
This is under the assumption that Ethereum is the most decentralized and broad, because he's basically saying, you need to have these training wheels that will basically put more power to Ethereum, which is fine, assuming Ethereum is doing constantly everything that it can to broaden the base of powers that broker it and streamline and formalize the decision-making processes and how governance is being addressed. And I'll speak about, I am not content with the state of things in Starknet, in our corner of the universe, and we are constantly striving to more decentralization, both of the operation of the governance process, of everything that is related to that. I mean, the very concrete next step is, staking is being turned on next month on Starknet, and in mid next year we'll be starting to unroll the decentralized operation, but we're putting a lot of thought and effort into ensuring that, at least on our layer 2, operation and governance are extremely decentralized and keep on broadening, which is an unending goal. It will never cease, because you will always have powers that want to come in and say, okay, I want to control more of this. And it's a big challenge for humanity.
Yeah, Sandeep?
I think what Eli also mentioned, that permissionlessness and decentralization are the most important things for the base layer to have. And censorship resistance is also one important thing. And I think 1 year back we had a big scare on Ethereum, where their OFAC censoring went up, and I think the Ethereum community did great in bringing that back to at least somewhat some sustainable level. Obviously we have still some small challenges, not small but challenges like this proposer builders and less number of proposers and all that. So those also Ethereum needs to keep striving. Also having a better and better environment for these settlement softwares that are being built. For example, having better pre-compiles for ZK, cheaper pre-compiles, and similar things for optimistic techniques. And obviously blobs, we see a lot of layer 2s can store their data also over there. And I think one important thing is also if we can have less and more predictable, less reorgs and more predictable roadmap, because eventually, if so much of these layer 2s are being built on Ethereum, the Ethereum base layer should have like a more predictable roadmap, right? Like right now we see in the Ethereum community, there is this tendency to, kind of, we call it like enshrining a lot of things inside the base layer. I think that might not be the best way, because then you are exposing, like as Stephen was saying, that the best thing about layer 2s is there are 100 experiments that 100 layer 2s are doing on top of these, on these L2s. Whereas if L1 starts bringing in a lot of features and all that, and then it results into some sort of catastrophic event on the L1, on the settlement layer, that will disrupt the kind of trust on the entire L2 ecosystem also. So more predictable roadmap, more sturdiness in terms of the reorgs, and better like settlement features would keep Ethereum in the lead amongst the settlement layers.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I really agree with all those, but to take it one step further, this may sound controversial, but I don't think either of you would disagree, which is, I think the ultimate goal is really censorship resistance, and decentralization is the best way we know how to build, censorship resistance. If we had some magical tool that could get us there, I don't care about decentralization per se, but it is the tool that we have and the best tool that we have to get us to censorship resistance. So I think, and we actually at Off-Chain Labs, we have the L2 team that contributes to Arbitrum. We also have the L1 team that builds Prism. And, the things that we think about are not like, how do we make Ethereum more flashy and try to, bring some of these, more experimental features into Ethereum, which, could happen over time, but really, as Sandeep was saying, that would be limiting, right? The beauty of Ethereum is its general purpose, and it can support such a variety of different experiments on top. And if you would start going in a particular direction, you'd actually, cut off some others. So I think what Ethereum can do, though, we think about how do we make it, more robust, more decentralized in a sense, and more censorship resistance, and things like having, more diversity in like block proposers, and making sure that even diversity in core software as well, right? So, and I say this as someone who builds one of the core software clients of Ethereum, but client diversity is important because clients could have bugs, and you don't want the entire Ethereum network to be running on one software client. And we actually have made a ton of progress. Vitalik has been pushing this for several years now, and have made a ton of progress there as well. But again, I think Ethereum has such a critical role, and those that think that it needs to take on more are actually, in my opinion, wrong. It needs to just make sure it's doing that role, as perfectly as possible, so layer 2s and layer 3s can tap into it for its decentralization and its censorship resistance.
Sandy, you have anything to add?
I mean, I think one of the hottest topic trending right now, it's about the Bitcoin and ETH ratio dropping below like a point where it starts to hurt sentiment, and people are kind of down on ETH right now. But I really resonate with, what everyone's touched on so far is kind of like decentralization and censorship resistance. These are real moats for the base layer. And these things take time. And I would go as far as to argue, apart from Bitcoin and Ethereum, no one is kind of improving on these two verticals of all the other L1s. And these things require time, and requires kind of opportunities to get to a place of global cultural and also experience diversity, which both of these protocols have, with very different missions, arguably. So I think these are kind of innovations at the level of like almost human civilization, and it's kind of like the only solution available right now. And I think I feel very lucky, to be building with such amazing builders, to kind of build on top of this base layer and to expand this like efficacy with various different experimentations.
I want to add on that, like what Stephen and I were also saying, that that's why this discussion around this value and Ethereum price and all that might be long-term bad for Ethereum, is that because what it is happening is that for Ethereum community, like everybody feels so much pressured to somehow bring more value into Ethereum, right? And I would say, like, people like all of us, like, I would, like, I'm biased, but fairly smart people are dedicating their lives to build these, like, this trustless, execution environments on top of Ethereum, is because when we came into Ethereum, it's like we saw this Ethereum as this infinite garden where people can build stuff on top, right? And now, like, because of this value pressures, right, price pressures and all that, what is happening is there's a lot of like pressure within the community that, okay, what all we can insource into the layer 1. And that is very, that might be problematic for the long run. Like, I think Bitcoin community has done a great job in terms of keeping the layer 1 as simple as possible,
Right.
so that, because you want to solve this one use case, like store of value, really well, and have no questions about that, right?
Right.
And then all these other things can be added on top. I think for Ethereum that should be to become the best settlement layer possible, and then allow this layered architecture to evolve, what Stephen was saying.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that I think I'm biased too in that I've seen the Ethereum ecosystem grow and it has the largest IQ kind of mind pool and mind share that we've seen. And it's kind of maintained its purest form, right? Just using Vitalik as an example, singing on stage. And, a few years ago he was dancing at DevCon and with his uniform hat. But of course, if you kind of take it further and kind of have, new folks entering the space looking at Ethereum, they may be like, what's going on here, right? So that leads to my next question, which is I'm curious about how you guys are thinking about Vitalik's role now in Ethereum, right? And Sandeep mentioned that you would like to see the foundation providing more of a roadmap, for example. And Vitalik still is very responsive when it comes to questions around technology, most recently with conversations around sequencers, decentralized sequencers, and areas that needs to be focused on or areas that needs to steer towards for the ecosystem. But as we're going towards a further decentralization kind of roadmap, how are you guys kind of thinking about it in your own kind of project of how Vitalik plays this role in the Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, we're very fortunate as an ecosystem to have Vitalik, who's really an incredible leader, an incredible thinker, and really has strong vision. And back to the point before, I think the thing that Ethereum has is time and time horizons, right? We're not short-term thinkers. No one here is a short-term thinker. Vitalik is a long-term believer. We're not trying to create something that optimizes for short-term value. We're trying to fundamentally build technology that revolutionizes and changes the world. And I think Vitalik really expresses that well, and it really permeates into the entire ecosystem. I think Vitalik does a really good job. Decentralization means you have to give others space to innovate. So, we have ideas. There's the all-call developers call where there's lots of contentious ideas, and Vitalik, I think, really gives the community space to have that decentralized informal governance, but at the same time to be the resource where people can look to explain the values. Because the thing that I think is going to happen, and we're seeing happen, is it's kind of contradictory. We all want to go mainstream and get users that don't care about the blockchain per se, but just like to get global adoption. But as you do that, every net user you get cares less and less and less about the values of decentralization. So having the core nucleus, really stemming from Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation into protocols like us as well that actually care about these values, it's important that we stay true to them and communicate them. Because a new user coming in might just want to buy their NFT today, or might just want to trade their meme coin, and that's okay. And they don't care about security and decentralization today. But there may be an event that happens in the future, and we hope it doesn't, where, oh, okay, I understand. Now I really wish that it was secure and decentralized because something happened. So the fact that users might not care about it today doesn't mean that we need to that we shouldn't continue to promote these values, and having really value-driven leaders and thought leaders like Vitalik explaining the values and pushing them and really encouraging and enlightening the ecosystem is a critical role. So I think he's doing a great job at what he does, and I hope he continues to do it for a very long time.
So I agree with everything that Stephen has said. Vitalik is an amazing thinker and leader, and I align with a lot of his values. At the same time, I think the process of governance in Ethereum needs to be formalized and streamlined, and there needs to be a way where there is more clarity and transparency, and the decision making needs to be more decentralized and transparent. And I say the same thing about, by the way, Starknet. And as I said, I'm very passionate about, well, fixing things or showing how things can be done by example. And I'm a big believer in that. So I hope at least we'll have a governance mechanism that people look up to and say, okay, we understand how this works. And
Yep. I mean, I agree with that. Like, Vitalik's job is to be a moderator, to be honest, right? Like, instead, like what you said, like, instead of Ethereum Foundation providing the roadmap, the job, and what Vitalik has done really, really great. I think he's the single source of, you said, like, Ethereum is this IQ horsepower and all that. Like this is because Vitalik attracts that,
Right.
and
Fair.
he has done such a great job in not giving people a feeling that this is my network, like come and build on my network. He's always given that this is public good and people should come and build on top of it. And in the past also, in terms of the roadmap also, he has always taken feedback, changed multiple times, taking the feedback and things like that. But what Ellie is saying, like, because he has much more experience in seeing these decentralized, your networks that, maybe having more transparent and more better governance process, more predictable process would be great. And yeah, like for Vitalik to provide this good moderation approach and make sure that this core DNA that Vitalik brings in doesn't get affected because just now in this cycle Ethereum has price pressures, right? So everybody wants to have like so many things inside. So my expectation from Vitalik is to stay how he is, how he has been in the last 5-6 years, and keep shepherding the community and moderating the community to move in the right direction, but not like allow any central party or any sections of the community to fully dominate and try to have like everything inside and all those things. Like that's really not great for all the amazing protocol builders that are building on top of Ethereum.
Anything?
I always say like there's a book or an MBA case study somewhere about how the Ethereum community is organized. It's really very unique. A traditional company is typically organized a little bit like the US Army. There's a hierarchy, it's a bit of a pyramid, everyone has a number of direct reports. If you're Jensen Huang, you have like 50 direct reports and it's like a flatter org. But Ethereum is a whole other kind of like, animal where there is a way that we all sort of understand how we relate to each other, even though we don't really talk on a daily basis. And there isn't really a forum to organize the L2s. There really isn't there are these, ETH research forums and EIP forums to organize the core devs. There are so many mini projects all moving in different directions and building up multiple parts of the stack simultaneously. And yet the whole everyone reads certain things. There are thought leaders and this whole flurry of innovation in a slightly chaotic but also organic way is really interesting. And I think I think there's definitely an anthropology work in there for someone's PhD to get really stuck into it and see how Vitalik's thoughts, and also there are other emerging thought leaders in the ETH space and how they're shaping the discourse and the narrative.
So we don't have that much time left, but there is a panel after us where Multicoin Capital will be talking about why Solana will take over Ethereum. So I really want to take this last few minutes to kind of have us take a stab at Solana, right? And I think what the argument has been made for Solana is that they're monolithic. The team is centralized, they move fast. And some of the traits I've seen that have kind of strengthened their community is that they are very on the ground. They are in many different local countries, and they have formed a pretty formidable kind of community in many of the smaller developer communities in these countries. I'm curious to get your thoughts in general here. I know everyone's super nice in Ethereum, and I feel like it's always been Solana talking about Ethereum and never Ethereum people talking about Solana. Do you know, is it just me feeling that way, right? This is the opportunity, guys.
The challenger brand needs to attack the dominant brand. That is always the branding strategy. So by acknowledging them, we are delivering them a win and need to recognize that the community is something of existence. But yeah, I'll let Stephen take the first.
No, well said.
Well said. I agree. That's quite.
And I think Ethereum community also have this background of when Ethereum was coming up, BTC community really trashed Ethereum. And then, within Ethereum community, everybody used to think that, what would it take for these guys to be a little bit open-minded? So I think Ethereum community also tries to self-reflect and say that maybe these guys are doing something interesting you should see. But these blockchains, especially if you are building an L1, it's a very, very long journey. Short spurts of for example, the communities that you are saying, on the ground community. Ethereum had the same thing, in 2017, 18, ETH Global and ETH communities were coming up all across the world, right?
Right, sure.
And over time, when those communities built and then, they see one cycle and then people made money and all that and they go away, new people come. How this like organic propulsion of this engine keeps happening over time is the bigger determinant of long-term success for an L1. And I see, like, for example, Ethereum, Solana has more of an execution environment. I think Anatoly himself has said multiple times that, he doesn't care about settlement. He just wants to build a fast execution environment. So I think this is like more of a marketing and market tactics, like the price tactics. But I think the use case that Ethereum and Solana are attacking are completely different. And Solana wants to be an execution engine. Multiple times, like Tolia himself said, that it would be, if it's an L2, even better, right? So I don't even think there is a competition there.
Okay.
I'll just say the game hasn't even started yet. Like, this whole competition within crypto is meaningless. It's offering the world outside real value on everyday things that hasn't yet been done anywhere.
Right.
And that's where we're focusing, and that's where everyone should focus. So these fights inside, they're kind of fun, but they don't matter at all. And Solana's great, great technology. So is Ethereum. And we haven't even started yet.
I'd say again, I think actually I have a lot of respect for Solana and their community. They are taking a very different approach, one that I personally disagree with, but I think we overall, again, it's early in the game, and it's good that someone's taking that experiment. And actually, it probably helps us accelerate the L2 roadmap. If there wasn't a Solana that's doing this on L1, people might say, why do we need it? Like, there's nothing here. I think actually having a different competing layer that's making certain compromises that we disagree with is accelerating our response to it, of how we actually get security, decentralization, and scalability. So, they have a strong community, and they have a strong team. I think that they're actually trying to take a good experiment and do the right thing. I don't personally think that it's the right experiment will win, but I don't think we're worse off for having them doing it.
All right. With that, we're out of time. Thank you, everyone. Let's give a round of applause for our great panelists.